one of the biggest difference though is that I preserved my intimacy component. And what they thought was the stupidest thing you could do, I slowly showed them that it was the smartest thing to do. That marriage was the smartest thing to do. Hello, welcome back to the Karla Eli Show. I'm your host, Karla Eli, and I'm here to guide you towards wisdom so that you may unlock a life of abundance by mastering the feminine balance. Before we get into today's flow, go ahead and like and subscribe if you're liking the show. And if you are a Spotify listener, please do your votes in the polls and answer the questions that I have set out for you in the show notes. I do read those. I do read what you guys say, and I care about your opinion. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to answer this question before I get into it. Why did I decide to show up to the Whatever podcast if I'm all about protecting my energy, protecting my space, my standards protect me? If the Whatever podcast, all they seem to do is disrespect women. Well, let me catch you up to speed. I first made a reaction video to one of the most viral videos that are out there on the Whatever podcast. And the question that Mr. Atlas was asking this OF girl, he was asking her, like, what do you rate yourself 1 through 10? And this lady rates herself being a 10 out of 10. And Mr. Atlas says, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not a 10. So I reacted to this video and I basically said a lot of things. I showed up very confident, and then I got an invitation. And at this point, I was already on the speech and debate team. I was practicing my communication skills. And I was like, you know what? I'll take this opportunity because why not? Why not? It's a good time to spread the message, and it's going to be an experience that I can only have if I show up. So I took up the challenge, and the reason why I accepted this invitation was because I truly wanted a challenge. I wanted to experience what it was to be with other women who were maybe OF girls or who were in an industry where I was like not. And it wasn't to judge them. That's the thing. Because a lot of people, when I showed up, I got a lot of criticism because a lot of people were like, you're above this. You're above the show. And here's the thing, as Christians, I'm a faith-based woman. I don't know about you, but I definitely am. As a faith-based woman, I am not too much for any room. I'm not too much for anyone. Like, yes, I reserve the people who have direct access to me, but if I'm out and about, I'm not going to be stuck up because someone might not be my type of friend, my type of person to be around. Like, that's not cool. Like, I'm not made out of gold. I'm not made out of like this silk. Like, I'm not going to be that girl. I'm just not that woman. If I have the opportunity to impact someone, I'm going to do so because that's what I was called here to do. So whenever I started seeing this comment of like, you're too much for them, you're too much, don't show up there, like, why are you wasting your time? I wasn't wasting my time. And I'm going to explain to you guys why I wasn't wasting my time. I was meant to be in that room with those women because I opened their eyes to a formula that they've never heard of. So when I show up for the Whatever podcast, I'm extremely nervous. I was actually wearing this sweater. I was extremely nervous, but I was also excited because my husband was with me. My husband's always supporting me, but I ended up showing up with gifts. Because I wanted to break the ice. I was nervous. It was my first time speaking on a podcast live. I wasn't sure what was going to go down. I was going in there with an open mind, but I wanted to create an environment where even though we all might come from different backgrounds, I wanted them to feel like I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to judge you, because in reality, I'm the least person that is going to judge. I don't judge. What's the point in judging? It's stressful. It's mean. And you're putting yourself on a pedestal when you are most likely the person to mess up the most. So even though these women did have different backgrounds, I was surprised because a lot of them were married. I think there was like 3 of us that were married, 1 of us that was single. Like, most of us were married. I think it was like a balance of 3 to 4 who were married. Not sure. But the whole point is I showed up with gifts. And the reason why I did that was because I wanted these women who did practice OF to understand that I'm not here. It's not a transactional thing. It's like I support women. I truly support women. I'm a girl's girl. And being a girl's girl doesn't mean I support you but not you. No. A girl's girl is supporting all women because you don't know where these people, you don't know their background and you can't assume their background either. And so when I showed up with gifts, and I showed up with gifts for Mr. Atlas as well because I was genuinely thankful for the invitation. Um, and you have to put yourself in people's positions, right? How can you apply this to your life? You have to put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you want to make a good, not just a good impression, because that's not what I was doing. I wanted to create strong connections and relationships with people that I was going to be meeting for the first time. And this is how you allow them to be open to your guidance, to your advice, to your formula, to your experience, because you're in a way being vulnerable first by saying, here, let me give you something. And if you don't accept it, then oh well, but at least I'm showing up with my best self. That's also how you should be encountering these situations. You need to place yourself in the position of the other person. I knew that Mr. Atlas most likely is probably extremely stressed trying to manage all of these women coming to his show twice a week and him getting, castings on. And I'm just assuming, I'm not sure if this is the case or not, but from like the outsider perspective that it was going to be my first time meeting him, I'm like, I don't want that to be his first impression of me. I don't want that. I don't want him to feel that way with me because I see what he's doing. I recognize what he's doing. And even if I don't agree with what he's doing, he's got something good going on here. He tapped the market and I respect that. So when we all go into the studio, I've already made my alliances. I'm like, I know who I'm sitting next to. I know who I feel comfortable with. Like I already know. But I show up and I'm ready to sit down next to next to some of the girls that I'm like, okay, we click, we connect, we connect. And Mr. Atlas looks at me, he's like, no, you here and you to there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he sits me next to a corn producer and a very famous OF girl. And I'm like right in the middle. And I'm like, great, there's going to be controversy. He wants controversy, which is fine. That's what the show is about. And I was like, oh my gosh, how the heck, how the heck am I going to win these women over? Because again, the goal for me wasn't to offend them. Like that's no. You can have cordial disagreements and discussions without being rude. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, but whatever. I was like, we got this. It's fine. I'm confident in what I believe in and the formula that I teach in dating and relationships. Like it's so solid. And you know why it's solid? Because it's based off of scripture. That's why it's solid. All the teachings that I do, I go straight to the manufacturer. I look it up. I do my research. What does God say about this? That's why I know it's solid. That's why I know that it's hard to find some cracks because to everything there's a solution and a step and a system because I actually read scripture and I listen to my Father in heaven, and then I guide you guys on how to date, right? So I was very confident in what I was going to be sharing. But I was like, how can I make this in a way like tangible and like chewable to these women who might not agree with me, right? And as the show progressed, I ended up winning everybody's hearts over. Everybody was extremely respectful because there was a rule. I had showed up with gifts. We all made alliances. We were all super respectful with one another. By the way, the gift that I gave the girls were roses. I gave each one of them roses. I truly wanted them to know that even though we don't agree or we might not agree on some opinions and perspectives, I'm not here to hurt them. Because we have to think about a lot of these women who are hurt women, right? Maybe not amongst like girl friendships, but with men. We don't know. You never know. And I didn't want them to have like their guard up, at least not when I was the one speaking. And funny enough, we agreed on mostly everything. And it's super interesting because for all of you that don't know, I did wait until marriage. Like I talked about my purity ring a little bit. I talked about that I was waiting until marriage. And in the beginning, they were like, why would you do that? Like, that's so dumb. But then I explained my theory, I explained my formula, and they were able to listen to it, and then they agreed. But I wouldn't have been able to communicate my opinions, my truth, if their guards were up. But because I made it a safe space to talk about vulnerability, different opinions, obviously it's not just me, but them too, they reciprocated. I set the tone. We are the standards as high value women. We are the standard as empire queens. And if you watch the full show, you'll see that a lot of the women, or both of the women that were sitting next to me, they were like, heck yeah. Wow. They were like nodding their heads like, oh my gosh, I agree with this. But the difference here, the one of the biggest difference though, is that I preserved my intimacy component. And what they thought was the stupidest thing you could do, I slowly showed them that it was the smartest thing to do. That marriage was the smartest thing to do. And obviously, after the show ended, we did speak to one another, and they were like, if I had someone like you, I remember her name was Kendra. And she's like, if I had someone like you lead me in the way that you're teaching, I would have made different decisions in my life. Thank you for what you do. And I got pretty emotional because I realized these women were unfortunately guided down the wrong path, and also they made their own choices, right? I'm not blaming it all on society or whatever, but it was very impactful, and I realized being open, not being judgmental, and trying to understand one another is the best way to move forward. And maybe even though they might not change their life or whatever the case may be, at least they know that there's another way to get everything you want without having to expose yourself physically, without having to exploit yourself. And truly, it was such an amazing experience. I had a lovely time meeting them. They were extremely smart. These women were smart because we did chit chat afterwards. They are smart. And I'm still so honored and so blessed to have gotten this opportunity of meeting these amazing women. Even though we don't agree on everything and we have different lifestyles, it was extremely interesting, entertaining, and wonderful to meet their minds. And truly, because I came from a place of understanding, compassion, and love, I was able to listen what they were saying, and they were able to listen to me. You don't achieve anything and you don't win people over by judging them, by criticizing them, by showing up as like, I'm better than you. If you truly want to be a woman of impact, if you truly want to change hearts and minds of people, you need to be compassionate, empathetic, and non-judgmental. And the best part of everything is that Mr. Atlas was agreeing with me too. He's like, you're extremely convincing. And he was even more curious to understanding the formula of what I teach women. And it was honestly awesome. But the key takeaways from how to win people's minds and hearts, because the goal here is to win people's hearts, not just their minds. Because if you win someone's heart over, then you're able to see direct change and they're able to make the necessary changes in their life and maybe even um, completely radicalize their life when you touch their hearts. Because when you touch their hearts, you meet them at a place of vulnerability and they're able to understand and even want to learn from you. How can we achieve this? Like I said before, going into every situation with an open mind, going into every situation with humbleness, compassion, and empathy. Because when you put up your walls, right, and you have like this wall, the other person's going to react the same way. But once you let your own guard down with measure, you don't have to be extremely open, with measure, caution, and discernment, the other person will follow. And they won't feel like they're in survival. They won't feel like they're being attacked. So they're going to respond in the same way. Notice Mr. Atlas was very respectful. He could have been, we've seen how he can be, but he wasn't. Because I wasn't intentionally attacking him. A masculine man will never attack a feminine woman. The moment that you start to be like, I'm better than you, I'm also a man, I can do this, is the moment that you enhance and wake up that side of him where he can attack you because you're trying to meet his energy. We are women. We don't need to meet men's energy. We don't need to try to be masculine whenever we're in an argument. On the contrary, do the opposite and see what happens. And when you do the opposite, then you will allow for truth or for conversation, for guidance, for advice, for wisdom to be at the center of the conversation. And that's how you win hearts. That is how you change people's minds. But how can you change people's minds? How can you impact someone when you can't even speak to them? Right? So you have to set up the stage to allow dialogue between you two. And the best way to do this is by seriously wearing the armor of God. And what is the armor of God? What do we clothe ourselves with? The breastplate of salvation. No, hold on. Let me pull up the scripture. Bear with me, okay? So it's the belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, feet of peace, shield of faith, helmet of salvation, and the sword, which is the spirit. So, ladies, you need to walk into every room with all of these checked. If you're not a believer, you can still apply this. There's other methods, right? I'm not going to lie to you and say like it's you're going to be able to achieve the level of success without believing. You do need to believe in order to achieve these things, because you can't wear a helmet of salvation if you don't believe that you are saved, for example. But when you walk into every room representing the kingdom, representing your creator, being the royal that you are capable of impacting people's hearts without saying a single word. Whenever my husband showed up to the Whatever podcast and we were next to each other, the vibes, the vibration, the power of like a magnetic, peaceful couple, it shifted the whole room. And you could see it in the videos. My husband supporting me and me supporting my husband. It is powerful. So, ladies, if you are a judgmental person, judgy Judy, if you are a judgy Judy, I urge you to reclaim your judgy Judy and be Princess Peace. Okay? We're not here to judge people. We're here to understand people. We're here to impact people's hearts. Okay? You were given this royal responsibility. You are royal, and you have the duty of representing your father, right? Wear it with pride. Wear your crown with pride and wear it in its rightful place. With that being said, ladies, be wise.